Welcome to The Approach Shot, the golf show that's more laughs than links, more stories than strokes, more guffaws than golfers. Here are the hosts of The Approach Shot, John Ashton and Neil Michaels.
Yes, this is The Approach Shot. And yes, I am John Ashton, looking around furtively for Neil Michaels, who is not here. He was here, however, when we interviewed Tom Abbot, who's the play-by-play guy for the LPGA, the man with the erudite British accent, who hangs out in the 18th tower and is an expert. He's going to talk to us about the Masters. He's going to talk to us about the LPGA, and he's going to sit through that six-pack of questions. Neil was also here when we did dad jokes and bad jokes with comedian Bert Hart, which could be why he's not here anymore. I don't want to say Neil embarrassed himself. I will allow you to say that after you hear probably the funniest 18 minutes of podcasting you've heard this week. So hang out with us. Neil, I don't do overtime, Michaels, will be with us when we come right back.
Tired of paying outrageous prices for Viagra? Well, we have great news. Now you can finally get Viagra at huge discounts. Generic sildenafil allows you to save up to $650 on Viagra. Why pay name brand prices of $15 per pill or more when you can get the same results for less than $3 a pill? Call today and get 50 generic sildenafil pills for just $99. Call 800-590-0443. That's 800-590-0443. Again, 800-590-0443.
Thanks for hanging out and for coming back. This is The Approach Shot. I'm John Ashton.
I'm Neil Michaels.
We have a guest with us who is a golf expert. We have combed the earth looking for a golf expert, this being Masters Week, and we have found one. Tom Abbot, who you will recognize as soon as he opens his mouth.
Absolutely.
Being the play-by-play announcer for LPGA coverage on NBC and the Golf Channel. Also as the co-host of The Big Break, which was one of my favorite programs, and why it's not around anymore. I don't know. Who do I complain to about that, Tom?
I could list some people, but I might lose my job.
Well, you know, Tom spends a lot of time in the tower, too, and they could just toss him off, make it look like an accident.
I was telling Tom earlier before we started that he and I met briefly at the Senior LPGA Championship, which they had at French Lick a couple of years ago, the inaugural Senior LPGA Championship. And Tom was there to cover it. And we were there to drink heavy and to play golf and have fun. I did a 1 hour radio show over the course of 3 days.
Well, the funny thing is that he still agreed to be on this program.
Well, he didn't know it until now.
I've always wondered what do you call people from French Lick?
I don't think they like French liquors. No.
Wow.
I still don't know the answer.
Yeah, I think they just go for the generic Hoosiers.
There you go.
Okay.
Yeah.
There you go.
Very good.
So, Tom, what got you involved in this crazy game, man?
Well, I started playing golf when I was 10 years old, roughly. And my dad said that one day I just decided that I wanted to play golf, but I'm not really sure why or what the motivation was for me to say that as a 10-year-old. But I started playing golf with a neighbor of mine who he was the same age as me, and he ended up being a really very good player and played on the European Tour and lost in the final of the British Amateur. So he was one match away from playing in the Masters, and was the number one ranked amateur for a little while. So his golf really progressed in a good way, and mine sort of didn't go that far. But
Mine sort of
did. So that was how I got into playing golf, and then it sort of led me to bigger and better things in the end.
Yeah, as I say, those who can do, those that can't talk about it. That's right. That's my same story. I'm not good enough to play competitively, but I love it, so I play, and I talk about it so I can make it tax deductible. That's, there you go.
And as you can tell from Tom has a little bit of an accent, and obviously it came from the time that he spent in Macon, Georgia. And Tom, you and John and I have another thing in common. We all spent a great deal of time in Atlanta, and you were on actually one of the stations that I did a lot of business with, CBS 46 in Atlanta. Yeah,
I interned there with a guy called Mark Harmon and another chap called Gil Tyree when I was in college. Yeah, that was kind of my first foray into TV, and it was great. Yeah, I had a really good time. I used to go up there and work on Friday evenings and maybe another day during the week when I was in college, and I learned a lot. And I still keep in touch with Mark, and I think he's still working in Atlanta somewhere. So yeah, it was great. Yeah, that was my. Well, my mother worked in TV, so I grew up around TV studios, but that was my first exposure to sort of proper big city local news in the US.
Is it different than the way BBC does things?
Slightly different, yeah. It was a little different. I was very lucky. My mum worked on some of the most famous shows that the BBC produced over a long period of time. So I got to see some very cool things when I was young, and got to go behind the scenes and into studios and sets that were like a fantasy land for a little kid,
Right.
But then when I came to America, it was in college. I played college golf at Mercer in Macon, Georgia, and that was kind of my connection to Georgia. And then when I got into doing TV when I was in college, that was a great transition into local TV and seeing how that worked and getting to meet some fascinating people and learning about high school football and basketball and NBA and going to hockey games at the old Atlanta Thrashers and things like that. So yeah, actually I did get to go and see the Lakers when Kobe and Shaq and those guys were playing for the Lakers. And I remember we went to a game and we would always sort of leave before the end of the game. But I think this was a crucial game that the Hawks won actually against the Lakers, which was a huge upset. And so we stuck around till the end, but we were out of our seats and we were down the hallway where the locker rooms were, kind of waiting for the players to come out. And as the Lakers came off the court, they walked down this hallway underneath the stadium to get to the locker room, and they started jumping out of the way, like squealing and like jumping out of the way. I was like, what on earth is going on? And there was this rat that came running down the tunnel, and all these like 7-foot giant guys were just diving out of the way, scared out of their minds. It was really funny.
Yeah. After this story is heard, Tom has now been banned from every NBA.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
I personally never thought, when they started playing hockey in Atlanta, because I grew up in New England. And I'm thinking, you really should not be able to play hockey anywhere where ice does not form naturally.
That's right.
It's
like in Florida,
right.
You mean.
Yeah, Florida, Dallas. It's just not right, man. It's just not right at all. Let's talk Masters for a little bit because it's going on. Not going to ask you for any predictions because I don't see how anybody can predict golf. Because yesterday's round, I mean, you can maybe see what kind of a upward or a downward spiral a player might be on, but yesterday's round does not dictate today's round for anybody, does it?
Well, I think in terms of confidence, it does. I mean, I think if a player is playing well, there's a high degree of confidence, and that translates into a good run of results potentially. In terms of when a player shoots a really low number, it's very difficult to back that up. So. Yeah. To keep shooting low 60s, then that would play into that argument. Yeah.
Yeah. Have you ever played Augusta National?
I've never played Augusta National. I have been there. As I say, I went to college there, and so when I was in college, a lot of fellow students had tickets and passes and badges, and so I was lucky enough to be invited. So I went 5 years in a row. The 4 years I was in college, and then the year after I graduated. But since I've worked for Golf Channel NBC, I've never been to the Masters. But before I worked there, I did. Yeah. So I got to see Arnold Palmer playing his final Masters, and got to see a few cool things there, and just being on the grounds and being a patron and walking around and seeing that scene is pretty incredible.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that same question. There seems to be obviously a mystique around Augusta, and there's a mystique around winning the Masters. But as a patron and as somebody who just got to be there, can you feel it? Is there something almost palpable about being at Augusta?
Oh, yeah, certainly the first time that you go and you walk onto the grounds. It's probably a little bit different now than when I first went in terms of where you actually go in and what you see. But when you walk through past the shop there and the merchandise area, and you walk out onto the grounds, and it just hits you with this sort of green fantasy land that's in front of you, and all the colors that stand out, and the topography. I mean, it's very, very hilly, you know, from the top, the property up by the clubhouse all the way down to Amen Corner. I mean, that's a pretty big drop there. And I remember standing at the back of the 10th tee and looking at the tee shots there, and you just hit it kind of off a cliff to the left, you know, over these trees. And you think, wow, on TV it looks a lot flatter, but it really is quite a steep downhill slope. And I guess when you watch it, you can see the ball run out on certain holes because it is, you know, it's so undulating, and then you've got uphill shots as well. So yeah, it's amazing, really. I mean, I think as a patron, you don't get to see as much as you do on television. I think watching on television, you get to see everything, and you really get a great sense of what's going on the ground,
right?
And in the golf tournament. But when you're there on the ground, you tend to sort of base yourself at one place, one spot, and watch all these groups come through. So it's difficult to get a sense of how the tournament is playing out. But the roars and the sounds echoing through the pine trees and everything. And when I was a kid watching at home, I would always remember the train, which I thought was quite bizarre. But that was like, because, you know, trains don't make the same noise as they do in the UK as they do in the US. You know, the horn of a train is a very different sound in the US. And so when I was watching as a kid back home in England, you would always hear like this train horn in the background. And that's kind of like a memory that sticks out. And whenever I hear a train horn now, and when I've been here in the US, it kind of makes me think of Augusta National. It's weird, like certain things, you know, set off your memories.
So John's not going to ask you for a prediction because he's the nice guy. But how about if we go halfway? Who do you think, based on how they're playing now, is best suited to do well?
Well, I mean, it is difficult to predict, but this year going into the Masters, we have a group of players in a place in their games where they could win. I mean, I think, you know, you look at Lee Westwood coming off a really good run in Florida. He's somebody who I would love to see do well. I don't know if he's going to be able to get it done, but I would love to see him do well, and he's playing very well. He certainly has done during that Florida swing. Justin Thomas, obviously coming off a victory. He's in a much better place. We'll see about Dustin Johnson, John Rahm. I mean, you look at that top 10 in the world. Brooks Koepka obviously struggling with injury, but if you look at that core group of players right now at the top of the world rankings, I think any one of them, you know, it's tough to argue against them winning the Masters. And then you've got a few other characters that have come along that are playing well. So, I mean, it's always going to be a fascinating test. It should be back to where we expect Augusta National to be. And I think there's going to be a good amount of patrons on site. There's going to be some roars, even though there won't be as many people as there normally are during, you know, non-COVID times, if you like. But I certainly think it's going to be a very different atmosphere than we had in you know, at the end of last year in November for the Masters. So I'm looking forward to it. I think it's going to be a sense of sport and golf kind of back to where we were before. Not all the way, but I think there's going to be a great sense of that.
Yeah. Do you consider yourself a homer? Do you root more heavily for the English golfers on tour than anyone else?
Well, in a working capacity, no. I mean, we have to be neutral, but in a personal capacity, yeah. I mean, I'd love to see players that I kind of root for nice guys, you know. And I think Lee Westwood is a good guy, and I think he's in a really good place in his life, and he's happy on the golf course, happy off the golf course, and somewhat of a golfing gentleman, if you like. I mean, if you look at what the Honda Classic, he was exhausted. But he committed to play, and he honored the commitment, even though, you know, he kind of knew that he wasn't going to be anywhere near his best form, and he was, you know, having played so well, he was exhausted. And he went to Augusta National, played 54 holes of golf there over 2 days, and then played 9 holes in the Pro-Am in Palm Beach Gardens and teed it up on a PGA Tour event. He was toast, you know. But he said, you know, I had committed to play, and I wanted to honor that commitment. I'm not somebody that pulls out at the last minute. So I think, you know, I like to root for the guys that are nice guys. And I think, if they happen to be from my homeland, then that works out quite well, yeah.
We've got more conversations about the PGA, the LPGA, golf in general with Tom Abbot from Golf Channel NBC when we come right back.